Welcome to another edition of Progressive Retail. I'm your host, Cory Mosley. As always, thanks for tuning in. Do you know what nomophobia is? Well, I didn't until recently, and I've invited Christian Ferrer from DemandLocal to talk to you about that, plus some things that are happening in the digital marketing landscape. Let's get started. With all the talk about mobile technology, mobile marketing, geofencing, there's a lot of questions that are still unanswered because, as we mostly know, this information changes pretty much on a dime. I've invited Christian Ferrer, one of the vice presidents of DemandLocal, to have a discussion with us about the topic. Christian, thanks for joining us today.
Cory, thank you for having me.
So, Christian, full disclosure, you guys, DemandLocal is one of the sponsors of the Internet Sales Performance Summit, happening in LA, by the way, David Kane and myself, as well as Jennifer Suzuki. So we know each other. We've seen some of your material. That's why I wanted to have you on. At our May event, you introduced this term nomophobia, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So I wanted to start our interview talking about what is nomophobia, do I have it, and if so, can I go to the doctor to get rid of it?
Yeah, so nomophobia, it's not a term that I introduced. It's not something that I made up. It's actually a term that Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines as the fear of being without a working cell phone.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it's actually the reliance of the general consumer, the general population on mobile devices has gotten to a point where Merriam Dictionary actually had to give it a name called nomophobia. So that slight feeling of anxiety, anxiousness, even FOMO, the fear of missing out, are all symptoms of nomophobia.
You know, people talk about the idea of responsive, right? Everybody wants to be, there was adaptive, then it was responsive. Is there such a thing as being too responsive?
Yeah, so in terms of a dealership's website being too responsive, you always, it's an absolute must that a dealership's website should be mobile friendly, also known as a responsive website. So when I say responsive, you want to make sure that when a consumer gets to the dealership's website, the customer doesn't have to, expand the screen or scroll from left to right. It should be a really good and easy user experience. The customer, in order for them to obtain the information that they want, they just have to scroll, up and down on the site. Some of the key things of keeping a site user friendly and having a good user experience is keep it simple and efficient. So if I'm a consumer and I'm on a dealership's website and I see something as simple as a phone number,
right.
I'm automatically going to assume if I click on that phone number, it's automatically going to call that phone number. Mm-hmm. If I see a phone number on there that gives me the option to text the dealership,
right.
The dealership needs to make sure that if I'm texting the dealership that someone's going to be on the other end, going to be able to answer me right away. So if someone's not going to be available on the other side of the dealership, let's say at 1 a.m, let's make sure if I'm the dealer, let's turn that function off and only keep it active during business hours.
Right.
Another thing is, staying in line with keeping it simple. If I see an address on the dealership's website and I click on it, what it should do automatically is open up to the navigation system of that mobile device. And another thing is, what we want the consumers to do is submit their information or submit a lead. And one of the things that kind of drives me crazy as a consumer is when it comes time to enter my phone number is that I want to make sure that the numerical pad shows up, not the standard keyboard pad. So, at the end of the day, make it simple for the consumer, make it easy, give them a good user experience. Now, in addition to all those functions, there's also such thing as a site being too responsive. So, adding all those payment calculators and pop-up offers, chat features, text functions, social media features, all that is great. And
right.
We see what the dealership's trying to do, but at the end of the day, all those additional add-ons and functions kind of is somewhat chaotic for a consumer. So if I'm getting all these pop-ups and not getting to where I need to get to as fast as I want to get to, it's going to give me a bad user experience. It's going to be confusing. And at the end of the day, it's going to also slow the site down. So at the end of the day, you just want to keep it simple. If it's too busy, it's going to get confusing. It can actually slow the site down. You just want to keep the user experience in mind when designing a site.
So from the mobile standpoint, let's talk about geofencing. So geofencing is not new, right? It's just a matter of how it's being used, what are people doing. But I believe there's a lot of viewers, with this, even though this is progressive retail, and I consider my viewers to be sharper than the average bear. The question is begged, what is geofencing and kind of how does it work? So walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So geofencing's probably been around on the dealership side for a good 3 years now. And essentially a geofence is a virtual fence around any physical location, whether it be a radius around any given point, a set of zip codes, a set of counties, an entire DMA, or even custom geofences around competing dealerships and those dealerships' PMAs. So geofencing is essentially a way for marketers to target consumers using the mobile device's GPS system through location targeting. So as these mobile devices or consumers walk in and out of these geofences, it allows marketers to target those consumers based on where they've been, where they're going, and where they're at.
Okay. So how should dealers be using that?
What a lot of dealerships that we work with and a lot of our agencies work with is they like to implement two strategies. One is conquesting each other. So let's say we're working with a Honda store. What they'll usually want to do is conquest the competing brands as well as the competing stores around their area. So let's say there's 15 other dealerships, Honda, Toyota, Hyundai, within a 15-mile radius of their store. What we can actually do is put a geo-conquest fence around each of those dealerships, as well as targeting and geofencing those particular competitors' designated market areas, or PMAs as well.
So Christian, let me ask you, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see dealers making when it comes to trying to implement a mobile strategy?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see dealerships do when they're trying to implement a mobile strategy is the messaging. One of the key things that a dealership should not do is just basically take their desktop messaging strategy and just rolling it over into a mobile strategy. One of the key things that dealerships need to keep in mind is that when a consumer is seeing these mobile ads and the messaging on their mobile devices, these consumers are in a totally different mindset and even physical position when they're seeing these ads, as opposed to someone that's sitting in front of their desktop when they're seeing these messages. You got to make sure that the message is conducive to the state of mind that consumer is in. And
now hold on a second. So let me ask you this. So doesn't that give me a situation where I'm potentially, am I fragmenting my brand by doing that? Am I serving up too many messages that may confuse? Because it's very typical, right? It says, okay, great, we're going to run the push, pull, or tow it promotion. So that's what's on the radio, that's what's on the TV, that's what's on the internet. You're saying from a mobile standpoint, that should be rethought.
Not necessarily. I think you can run with the same general messaging, just approach it in a different manner. So one example is the creative that you're conveying on a display banner, a mobile display banner. So when you're talking about a banner out on a mobile device, you're not going to have as abundant of real estate as you would on a desktop banner ad. Just because the banner ad on a mobile device is much smaller than what you would see on a desktop. So you can get away with putting a lot more information and content on a display banner on a desktop ad versus a mobile device when the banner ad is much smaller. So if you're just trying to downsize the ad itself and throwing it onto a mobile device, it's going to be the text will be too small. It's going to be difficult to read. You want to just basically keep it simple, keep the general message in play.
So, Christian, what many people might not know is that your company actually powers a lot of the local agencies across the country that, whether it doesn't make sense to put the financial resources into building out a whole digital mobile marketing department, so they'll work with your company's technology. So you kind of have the ability to see not only the clients you're working with directly at the manufacturer level or individually, but also all of these agencies are, kind of providing that data. What are you seeing from a consumer end that would be considered a consumer trend that dealers should know about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll state the obvious here. More and more consumers are shifting and conducting a majority of their purchase and research on mobile devices these days.
Right.
It's apparent, it's happening. There's basically nothing you can do on your desktop device that you can't do on your mobile phone these days. And really, a really big thing when it comes to mobile devices is app use. And consumers are spending about 4 hours a day just consuming information and using apps. And 30% of that 4 hours is actually spent on social media, majority of that coming from Facebook. So
wow.
One thing that we've been seeing a lot in the last 6, 8, 9 months or so is the growth of consumers engaging with dealers through social media. So there's a lot of really cool product marketing and advertising functions that Facebook provides these days.
Now there's people who still say that you can't sell cars on Facebook. What do you say to that?
I'm actually a believer in that as well. A few years back, I was always considering social media more of a PR play. Letting the community, letting the users know, like, hey, you guys sponsored a baseball game or a little league team. But the advancements in the information that's available and the targeting capabilities that's available on social media platforms these days is 100 times better than it was just even 2 years ago. Facebook actually provides dealerships the ability to do that same exact product remarketing with actual inventory on the dealership's website based on the VDPs that the consumers are looking at on the dealership. So now what can happen is a consumer goes to ABC Nissan's website and they look at a 2017 Honda Accord or a 2017 Nissan Maxima.
Right.
There's going to be there'll be a Facebook pixel placed on that user's computer or mobile device. Facebook and social media is more than just a PR platform now. They are actually able to sell cars on there.
Okay, so I ask everybody this question, and this may be a continuation of what you just said, but I want you to take out the Christian Ferrer DemandLocal crystal ball and share with our viewers some predictions for automotive retail, automotive digital marketing, retail in the next 18 to 24 months. What are your predictions? It's
going to get way more competitive. I think the last several years, everybody in automotive has kind of been riding this wave of, record-breaking sales months, and we're starting to see that trend slow down. My advice to all the dealerships out there, all the marketing companies out there, is to adopt an aggressive and efficient and effective mobile strategy now. Dealerships and the agencies and companies out there with an aggressive mobile strategy are going to be the ones that stand out.
Awesome. Well, Christian, I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks at the Performance Summit out in LA, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show also. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Cory, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay, you got it. Well, that's our show for today. I want to thank Christian from DemandLocal for joining us and sharing some insights into the marketing landscape as well as solving the conclusion of what is nomophobia. As always, you can find out more what we're doing to help dealers become more progressive and profitable by visiting our website, mosleyautomotive.com. This has been another edition of Progressive Retail, exclusively on the CBT Automotive Network. I'm Cory Mosley, and I'll see you next week.